Hello and a warm welcome. Today we are talking about a topic that fuels many debates: discrimination in organizations like the police. But instead of getting lost in the often heated discussion, we will take a very objective look at it. Specifically, from a structural perspective, based on a social science analysis by Bergmann and Jakobsen. Let's start with an idea that you surely know as well: the talk of isolated cases, or bad apples. This explanation is, of course, totally popular. Why? Because it is so nice, simple, and convenient. It allows us to reduce a huge, complex problem to just a few people. But we will see in a moment why that is far from enough to truly understand the phenomenon. And that leads us directly to the core question that is always in the air: is racism actually just the problem of a few individuals who have the wrong attitude? Or is the phenomenon perhaps much deeper, meaning within the system itself? At first glance, this common explanation has something reassuring about it, doesn't it? Because it clearly limits the problem. It is the actions of a few people who have somehow lost their way. The unspoken assumption is that the system itself is fundamentally healthy and functioning. But to truly grasp the whole thing, Bergmann and Jakobsen argue, we have to look beyond the pure intentions of individual people. So, let's change our perspective and see what tools science gives us to see the bigger picture. Here we see two very different lenses through which you can view the problem. On one side, we have social psychology. It often looks at what happens in people's heads, their prejudices, their conscious attitudes. Sociology, on the other hand, asks a completely different question: what actually happens in practice? Which structures and which routines lead to certain results? And this applies regardless of what individual people think or intend while doing it. And that brings us to this key term: structural discrimination. The crucial point is that it is about disadvantages that can arise through completely normal, everyday processes in an organization. The result can be discriminatory, even if nobody comes to work in the morning and decides, today I'm going to discriminate against someone. Okay, let's make it concrete. How can it be that normal work in practice ends up leading to problematic, even distorted results? Let's look at this cycle, because it makes it very clear. Everything starts with a perception. For example, a certain neighborhood is considered more dangerous. From that follows a very logical routine: okay, then we will conduct more checks there. And what is the result when you look more closely somewhere? Of course, you find more. And these findings then confirm the original assumption. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, driven by completely normal work processes. And this is also a point that research shows again and again. There is often a huge difference between what people say and what they actually do. Someone might express prejudices but not act in a discriminatory way in practice. And vice versa. That is exactly why it is not enough to just ask about people's beliefs. You have to look at the practice to understand discrimination. Good, let's go one level deeper. In debates, people often say, let's stick to the facts and figures. But research shows us that even these figures are not as neutral as they might seem at first glance. Everyone has probably heard this sentence before, right? Where is the hard data? That sounds totally reasonable at first. It's like saying, give me the facts, get rid of the opinions. It suggests that numbers are the ultimate, indisputable truth. But, and this is the jumping off point, before we can even start to count anything, someone has to decide what exactly is being counted. Research creates categories, and this decision of what to focus on and what to perhaps ignore already shapes the reality that you later believe you are measuring. Let's take a concrete example that is widely discussed in scientific discourse: the category of clan criminality. The moment this term appears in official reports, it naturally directs the focus of investigations. People look for it specifically, and what happens? In the end, the statistics show exactly what people were looking for more intensely. The category itself has therefore helped to make the phenomenon statistically visible, even though it was actually only supposed to describe it. What does all of this mean now for research on this complex topic? Bergmann and Jakobsen draw a very important conclusion from this, which, in my opinion, throws a completely new perspective on the whole debate. This table here summarizes it perfectly. We have different research approaches, all of which have their value. One looks at attitudes, another at practice, and a third at large structures. None of them can show the whole picture alone. And that is the important part. They do not contradict each other. They complement each other. Each illuminates one piece of the puzzle but also has its own blind spots. And that leads us to a very central insight. This constant search for the one big study that proves to us with a single number whether there is a structural problem or not is an illusion. The question of a critical mass of incidents misses the heart of the matter, because this complexity simply cannot be captured in a simple number. And so, in the end, we might arrive at a completely different question. What if the constant search for individual culprits actually distracts us from what is essential? What if we shift the focus and ask instead, how can we design routines, processes, and structures so that discriminatory results simply become less likely? A question that certainly gives us food for thought. Today we covered a work by Jens Bergmann and Jakobsen from the year 2021. Do you have questions or topics you'd like to see? Feel free to write to me at YouTube at EmpowerMigra.com. EmpowerMigra, understanding begins with listening.